work the network, as you mentioned before, 20 years in cybersecurity, got a lot of connections, got a lot of relationships. My co-founders very similarly. Um, and so that helped us get our first 10, 20, 30 customers.
Welcome back to another installment of the Next Gen Case Study Series. On today's episode, I have with me Michael Argast, who is the co-founder and CEO of Kobalt.io, a cybersecurity company that specializes in providing cloud-focused security solutions for small and mid-sized businesses. With over 20 years of experience in the cybersecurity field, Michael has built Kobalt into a trusted partner for over 200 companies, helping them develop robust security programs. Prior to founding Kobalt in 2018, Michael held leadership positions at TELUS and Sophos, where he led global teams and strategic security initiatives, and his expertise spans from building alliances to pioneering innovative security strategies for modern cloud-native organizations, which is why we're excited to have him on the show. Michael, welcome to the program.
Thanks. Great to be here, Devin.
Yeah, the pleasure's all mine. I'm really excited to get into some of the stuff you're doing here with Kobalt. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, Michael, I'd love to start with a quick little background on who you are, where you came from, and how you landed as the co-founder and CEO of Kobalt.
Yeah. So, started my career as a tech geek, sysadmin, network admin, that kind of stuff. Worked through sales engineering, and then eventually leadership positions at Sophos and TELUS, as you mentioned earlier. I was actually semi-retired before I started Cobalt. I had spent the summer before Cobalt on a beach in Thailand with my family, came back itchy to do a little bit of work, not too much, and got drafted actually by my two co-founders into starting a cybersecurity startup. And for me, the whole question was, why am I coming back to cybersecurity? I could easily go and get a job somewhere. And for me, the unsolved problem in cybersecurity has always been the challenge of small and mid-sized businesses. They just don't have the resources, budget, time to address security effectively. But once you get to, half dozen employees, you actually have to do all the things. And so how do you make that actually achievable for exciting small businesses?
Yeah, that transition between, doing something and then going into that retirement and then kind of realizing, hey, listen, maybe I need something to fill my time with a little bit. I can relate to that because I watched my parents kind of go through that whole thing. My dad was the same, tried to take some time off and then found out that he'd much rather be out there doing stuff.
I was properly semi-retired. I was doing a little bit of charitable work. I was doing a little bit of consulting, but yeah. And honestly, like I love building. And so building Cobalt from nothing to, we're almost 50 employees, almost 600 customers now, actually, or over 600 customers. And so it's a lot of fun building something up. So
Yeah, that's really exciting. One of the things I'm really present to is that transition between, scrappy startup CEO and now you've been in the game for a while. You got a lot of
yeah.
customers and a bigger responsibility or more on your plate. I wonder if you could talk to what that transition was like for you, how your role kind of evolved from those early days of like getting out there trying to find your first few clients to where you're at now, where you have kind of a level or leveled off, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always, early days, dishwasher, bottle washer, sales, marketing, everything kind of thing as CEOs. Delivery had some pretty quick traction early on and needed to start building out delivery capacity pretty quickly. Honestly, for the last 4 or 5 years, a lot of my focus has been in sales and marketing, right? So just, acquiring new clients, trying to grow quickly. At Cobalt, we believe like everybody deserves great security. And there really aren't a lot of organizations that are focused at solving it at SMB at scale like we are. And so we almost have like this imperative to grow as quickly as we can, because there's hundreds of thousands of businesses globally that need a service like ours, right? And so, that's been a big focus of my energy. Just continuing to bring in great people, great leaders to take things on, elevate and delegate has been a core part of the story all along. But of course, as you get to each different scale, the challenges increase, right? So,
Mm.
a year ago, we were hiring maybe a person a month. Now we're hiring 3 or 4 people a month. There's a lot of different things that change as you get to each new level of growth. But that's part of the fun, part of the journey, right? So,
Right. So initially, what's the strategy here? We go for the immediate network, people you know, because the one thing I'm really present to that you mentioned that I don't want to skip over is the that small, medium-sized business market isn't being addressed
yeah.
as if it doesn't exist almost. Everybody's either going after the big fish or looking for the lowest barrier to entry to make sure that the small guys have something, but nobody's working with that kind of middle crowd. So do you tap into your own network at first and then kind of branch out from there, or what does that
Yeah.
growth strategy look like?
Yeah, it's a real challenge. So initially, definitely it was, work the network. As you mentioned before, 20 years in cybersecurity, got a lot of connections, got a lot of relationships. My co-founders very similarly. Um, and so that helped us get our first 10, 20, 30 customers. The challenge with cybersecurity specifically, it's not like a traditional B2B SaaS company where you can kind of do product-led growth. And it's really about trusted referrals and networks. And so you can grow at a certain pace through word of mouth, but you can't, grow 100% year over year through word of mouth. You need to have other strategies.
Mm-hmm.
A key part for us has been building relationships with significant trusted partners. So, for example, in Canada, we have a relationship with RBC. When they have clients that have security needs, they bring them to us. We partnered a couple of years ago with a company called Vanta, which is a industry and like compliance automation leader, and that's driven a lot of business our way. And so, you know, finding the organizations that have a strong existing relationship with the customer means that we have that kind of warm introduction and we can prove ourselves and build that connection. And that's been a really critical part to our success. Um, and frankly, we still have to crack like proper outbound marketing and all the kind of stuff that we need to do to get to the next level of scale. But yeah, partners have been really critical because nobody goes on Google and searches cybersecurity service providers and picks the first one on the list and then goes to work with them. You need to make sure that your cybersecurity company actually knows what they're doing and is trustworthy and everything else. So
And so how do we intentionally design that so that when people do come to you or when you do reach out to them, um, the message is out there and received that we can do what we say we can do, but
yep.
also this might be a case of like you don't know what you don't know. As a small to medium sized business, what makes cybersecurity important to me? When does that kind of threshold kick in? You said after you get past that, like, maybe 8 to 12 employees, it starts to get a little more complicated in the business, and so there's a need for it. What do
Yeah.
people go after when they finally discover that there's a need for it?
Yeah. So there's definitely a design with intent in terms of go-to-market strategy.
Mm,
Our very first service was a security monitoring service that had a heavy technical component. And so we decided initially that we were going to have a narrow focus on B2B SaaS companies because we figured they'd be easier to onboard and they'd be more in demand of our services. That's grown into broadly a focus on high-tech startups, right? That's our kind of real success in the marketplace. The thing that is really a driver for our customers is if you're say a B2B SaaS company and you're trying to sell to an enterprise or a government, you need to be able to prove that you're trustworthy from a security perspective. And so that drives a lot of demand for our services through things like SOC 2 compliance and ISO compliance and stuff like that. And so, being narrowly focused on a customer and understanding exactly what they need has allowed us to grow way faster than we would have if we had just said, oh, yeah, we'll work with any small business, right? So that's been a very specific strategy. And then when we think about partners and how we go to market, very much we do so through that lens, right? Like who is already working with our ideal customer profile, has a lot of those connections and relationships, who can bring us into the next customer. And then obviously, as you work a lot within a given segment, so for example, we have over 150 health tech customers as clients, you get those proof points. You get to know exactly what those customers need, and you get really good at repeating that service for those customers as well.
right. So as the customer acquisition kind of model evolves over time, um, is this a lot of just outbound outreach to the right partners so that when you do finally kind of tap into we'll call it a well of consumer or customers, uh, that constitutes the success, or is there more of an inbound marketing effort in terms of like branding and messaging and running advertising campaigns and that sort of thing?
I mean, we do a moderate amount of brand marketing. We played with like, the traditional advertising based thing and it just didn't work. It didn't pay off for us.
Mm-hmm.
We're continuing to evolve outbound strategies. Classically in our business, SDR strategies seem to have some degree of traction. But from a partnership perspective, we tend to be much more focused and selective. So we think about problems to solve for a customer. We're trying to build an end-to-end security program for our clients. And so the technology partners and others that we work with need to, fit clearly within the wheelhouse of like, this is a problem that our customers have, and then we can wrap services around in a way that is valuable to those customers. And so an example, Vanta, I mentioned earlier, you know, they, um, they have over 8,000 customers that are trying to, get their SOC 2 and ISO compliance. Many of them are quite capable of using the technology on their own, but many of them are not. Many of them need assistance from a service provider like ourselves to do all the other things that are related to compliance, penetration testing and, endpoint security and security monitoring and vCISO advisory services. And so, finding the partners that actually have a complementary element to their technology or service or place in the market to what we can do. And then there's reciprocity, right? Like we bring customers to them, they bring customers to us, everybody's winning, right? So I think thinking really deeply about partners rather than just signing up with anybody who wants to work with you, and we've seen lots of failure that way as well. Like lots of IT MSPs say, we'd really like to do security along and work alongside of you. And it's like, that's great. How many customers do you have? 5. It's like, that's not really going to move the needle for us. We need to think about partners that can actually help us reach hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of customers over time. Right.
So okay, on that point, what's the risk, right? And just for anybody else who's kind of in that early stage of like exploring how to create these partnerships, if you do start signing up these kind of smaller players and you take on a few clients instead of a few dozen, what's the risk and how do you make that deciding or determining decision that this isn't a good fit?
Yeah, I mean, focus energy and time. Really, like
Mm,
the biggest thing that you have to manage and constrain as a founder is like, you only have so many hours in the day, right? And so you need to focus your energy and time where you're going to get the biggest return. And so if you sign up a dozen small little partners that aren't really capable of moving the needle for you, and they each consume a little bit of time, then that obviously is going to distract you from doing something that's really going to move the needle. And so yeah, one of my favorite kind of analogies for this, being an econ guy, is as a founder, you always need to be looking for ways to increase your opportunity cost, right? So basically, increasing the amount of value that each hour that you have brings to the business. And so, if you let yourself get distracted by, all these little paper cuts of things that aren't really going to move the needle, then you're never going to get to where you want to get to.
right. Okay. That makes sense. So when you're kind of setting this up and going through all of the different things that are important in terms of measuring your success, what kind of KPIs or milestones are you looking for to make a decision to say that yes, this is the right fit, or no, this isn't the right fit, and yes, we're on track, or no, we're going in the wrong direction?
Yeah. I mean, so in our case, very simple KPIs, we measure the source of every single lead that's generated by our business, right? And so, when it gets to a specific partner, we don't just measure like, you know, we got this many leads from this partner, but we got this many leads from their account executives, this many leads from their CSMs, this many leads from the individual people. So we can see, again, where those 80-20 ratios live and where we have the most leverage and momentum. And so being able to see like, month by month in real time, like where are our leads coming from? Where are we seeing return on our investment of energy is a great way to drive that focus. And also, cut people off or focus our energy away from people who aren't really providing those returns. And, you get negative surprises, you get things that like don't yield the results that you would expect.
Hmm.
And you get positive surprises where, we have a partnership with Prescient, which is a great auditor. And, we thought it was going to be a small partnership and is quickly growing into a big partnership because from a lead volume and activity perspective, it ends up being a better synergy than we expected. Right. And so,
Hmm.
the numbers don't lie, if you're measuring them effectively for sure.
Yeah, that's really powerful. There's this looking at the way that you guys kind of go about that approach to building and establishing those relationships, and then um, I get a sense that a lot of the leads that you get come from the referrals,
Mm-hmm.
and that only comes from creating a product or a service that is worth talking about. And so I wonder if we could look into that a little bit. What about what you guys are doing makes it worth sharing with a colleague or a friend or somebody else so that they need to get involved with it?
Yeah, I think so. Many people sell a service primarily to generate revenue. And like classically in the security services business, a lot of consultants just bill their time hourly, right? Like that's their kind of focus is I want to bill as many hours as I can, which actually creates a conflict between them and the customer, right?
Mm.
We're very outcome focused with our clients. Like, what is the actual goal that you're trying to achieve? And there's like the intermediate goals, and that might include something like SOC 2 or ISO certification that helps them acquire those new customers. But actually acquiring the customers and building that trust within their target market is their goal. And so being able to understand that and then translate that back into service design and how we approach it, right? Like, oh, you don't have your SOC 2 yet. We're going to give you an engagement letter that you're going to be able to use to help you acquire customers between now and 3-6 months down the road from when you get it, right? If you have a need to get one of our security professionals on a call with your customer to prove that you're doing the right security things, like we're going to do that because, if we help you land that big 6-figure, 7-figure deal, you're going to want to do more security stuff with us. So everybody's winning, right? And so really having that customer first lens of like, why do we exist? Like Kobalt exists to help our customers secure their business so they can grow faster. We believe fundamentally that small and mid-sized businesses are the engine of economic growth in this country and, drive more job creation and innovation than, all the big businesses combined. And so if we can support them effectively, they can grow faster and everybody benefits. And so, just designing your services and how you approach your customers with that in mind makes all the difference.
Yeah, there's something to be said about that, especially in a um, advanced capitalist system where we're so far down the path that the only thing that really matters is transactions and numbers for the shareholders. And so it's really refreshing to see an
Yeah,
approach
there's
that
a
is more
short-term and
human.
long-term aspect to that perspective, right? Like you can try to loot your customers in the short term in
Hmm.
order to like maximize your profits in the quarter, but in the long term, that does not pay off, right? And so, there is a truly like pro-capitalist perspective of if you do great work in the marketplace and the market gets to know it, then you're going to get referrals, you're going to get word of mouth, your business is going to grow faster than everybody else's. And so, there's a lot of like quarterly focus on like short-term results and short-term revenue at the expense of that long-term, like doing the right thing and building the brand and delivering a service that provides actual value. But like, a true capitalist isn't in it for the quarter, right? You're in it for, long-term growth and opportunity.
I love this idea. Simon Sinek popularized it, the infinite game.
Yep.
So in one respect, like the game to win is to collect as much revenue as possible before the business folds, right? And that's what I was pointing out before with the very transactional thing. And then on the flip side, the infinite part of it is, hey, the whole point of the game is to play it for as long as possible.
Keep
And
playing.
so how do we do that in an effective way?
Yeah, and how do you build the flywheel that generates more momentum over the time? Back
Right.
to that, like to continuously increasing your opportunity cost. Like, what are you doing that's adding further momentum and expanding the flywheel over time? Big fan of the Simon Sinek and why and infinite game and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's obviously key to a lot of successful businesses.
I think there's an inevitability that comes along with doing a really good job. That if I do a really good job, people will notice and they'll want to do more work with me because I do a really good job. And I know that seems super basic, but when you put it into practice, like you have, Michael, there's a clear outcome that shows when we do really good work,
Yeah.
people talk about it and we get more work. And so I
Yep.
think I think that's really refreshing to see. As we kind of come to a close with our time together here, Michael, I wonder if we could look forward a little bit. What are some of the big goals that you guys are aiming at?
Well, we have been expanding our geographical coverage. So we were founded in Canada. You mentioned earlier 200 customers. We've got 200 customers in British Columbia and over 600 around the world. So we've started our APAC expansion. We're putting footprints in Europe later this fall. Turns out a health tech company in the UK feels very similar to a health tech company in North America in terms of their needs. So that's been a really good thing for us. We continue to expand the services that we're offering our customers, right? So, our goal over the long run is really to be able to solve, more than 90% of the security problem for these small and mid-sized businesses, and that means building capabilities. You can't build those capabilities all at once. You need to kind of earn the right to expand your services to do them well. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, I came out of retirement to make a dent in this market, which means serving enough small businesses that you can say security is a solved problem in the space. And that's going to be literally hundreds, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of businesses over time.
That's an incredibly ambitious goal, Michael. I'm rooting for you, man. I
Thank
really
you.
believe in that, in the power of the work that you're doing. So along the way here, any hints into what the strategy might be? Are you guys going to lean a little bit more into the branding thing, or are you going to stay focused on partnerships?
I mean, I think, like any business, you have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time, right?
Mm,
And so you can't just like rely purely on partners to bring you your growth. You need to be able to generate your own growth organically, whether that's through referrals, outbound, word of mouth, all these different things.
mhm.
Um, yeah, it's, you know, I believe that you actually in businesses, you need to be able to embrace the complexity in order to be able to address the simplicity of your vision, right? So if we're trying to solve security for SMB, that's a very simple vision, but there's a lot of complexity in the execution of that, and that's okay, right? And so, yeah, partnerships remain key. We've got our eyes on some big partners that we think can continue to move the needle for us, but we also need to, have a lot of our own muscle to be able to drive growth.
That's exciting. To close it out here, Michael, I wonder if there was, we could imagine there's somebody out there who's also up to it, trying to create something for themselves, facing similar challenges. What sort of advice might you offer a person in that position?
Yeah, I think start with the why, it's the Simon Sinek style, like understand what you're trying to do and the purpose that your business or your organization is there to solve. And then, root your strategy in the why, right? Like, we've rooted our strategy in what we believe is the value for these small businesses in terms of building a strong security posture and how that supports the growth of their business. And the decisions get really easy when you know exactly why you're doing it, rather than purely chasing growth, for example, right? If you have a core mission that underlines everything that you're trying to accomplish, then decisions and everything else gets a lot easier from that point.
Yeah, it's funny. Another one of my friends has a line painting company, and that was something that he got really clear on. And when he did, that was when he experienced massive growth in his business, because he was like, if if it doesn't fall into parking lot and parking lot maintenance, we're not touching it. And
Yeah,
so he
it's as much about saying no to things as it is about saying yes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly that. He was able to cut off some things that weren't necessarily as profitable. Although, yeah, we can take extra work, but when he got really clear on this is what we're doing, that's when everybody started coming through the gates. And so I love that that's a part of the advice that you offer. Michael, this has been great. You've been so generous with your time and your wisdom, and I'm very grateful for that. If somebody wanted to reach out to you to pick your brain, or perhaps work with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, you can reach us at Kobalt.io. We're on LinkedIn. My email is Michael, Michael, at Kobalt with a K, Kobalt.io. And so if you have security needs to grow your business, we'd love to help you out.
Wonderful. We'll make sure to link to that stuff in the show notes so that people that are watching or listening will find you easily. On that note, if anybody watching or listening wants to reach out to me and my team for any of your marketing or AI needs, you can visit nextgengrowth.com. Otherwise, that's it for this episode. Thanks for joining us for this conversation, and I will see you in the next.